Welcome to the Building Up Leaders in Property podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Bangura, and I'm thrilled to have you here with me today. Whether you're an emerging leader or a seasoned manager in the property and construction industry, this podcast will help you elevate your leadership, build a cohesive team, and have more impact. Join me every week where I'll leave you excited and confident to take your next steps. Thanks for being here with me. Now let's get started. Once upon a time, I worked with a boss who was technically brilliant. There was so much knowledge and experience there that I had the potential to learn so much from this manager. And he was a good person. I think genuinely he was a nice guy. But, and this is a big but, he was one of the hardest people I've ever worked with because we were lacking a fundamental cornerstone to every relationship, and that was trust. And this idea of trust and the importance of trust is something that I come back to time and time again in my interactions with people and in my work, helping leaders scale and grow personally and bringing their teams on the journey, creating those cohesive teams. And trust sounds so obvious that we need it. It sounds so obvious that I think we don't spend enough time to actually understand what it means. Because whilst in its most simple form, work is a transaction. Someone shows up to work, they do their job, they perform their duties, they get paid. But most people, and certainly high performers, they want more than that. They don't want to just show up and do the job. They want to do well, they want to grow, and they want to be part of something bigger than them. And I know that for driven people like me and like you, it motivates us. It pushes us to seek excellence, to do the best we can in every instance, because we want not only to do the job, we want to do the job well, because we know if we can all pull that together, we can have a huge impact in the world. High performance and high functioning teams know this, and great leaders know this. But that connection to a common cause has to be built not only on those shared goals, but also by having strong, trusting relationships. And as humans, we deeply crave connection. So we want to have these strong relationships. But the truth is, trust is something that happens over time. It is not a light switch that we just flick on. And I want you to think of every relationship we have as having a piggy bank attached to it. And every interaction we have, we are either putting gold coins into that piggy bank or we are taking them out. So every respectful engagement puts money into that bank, and every negative interaction, every stress, every strain takes coins out. And I think it's very easy for us to forget that as leaders. Sometimes we just assume we have trust because we get on well with someone, and that's not always the case. As I said, this manager I used to have, our relationship was fine on the surface. I didn't dislike him, but did I trust him? No. Did I think he was a good manager? No, because there had never been enough gold coins deposited into our relationship, but there had constantly been coins pulled out. And as every one of us works to improve our relationships, we need to be thinking about how do we build trust? And I think the first part is being present, actually showing up, actually being around the people that you work with. And that doesn't mean you necessarily have to be in the office every day. I am not a proponent of that desk time concept, but I do think you need to have real engagement with people, whether it's in real life or virtually. You need to have real connection points with people. And that might just be as simple as, weekly meetings or fortnightly meetings or whatever it is. But having those touch points for people where you actually just genuinely get to know each other is so important. And the second part of that is consistency. We need to be a constant presence, and we need to show up and do what we say we're going to do. Not once, not twice, but most of the time. And when we do that most of the time, when we put those coins in time and time again, we build a stockpile so that when something does go wrong, we have a solid bank balance there. We can take a few coins out. It's not the end of the world, but consistency is so crucial. And for me, this is just such a pet peeve. When people set up meetings and then don't show up, or cancel them last minute on you, or move them around 100 times, or show up to meetings without agendas and without intention. To me, you're not setting a standard. You're not showing up consistently. I don't respect that. And I think that you probably don't respect me either if that's how you behave. So I think having that presence and showing up consistently are crucial. But beyond that, we also need to make sure we're actually open with each other, that we are having meaningful conversations, because it's easy to talk about what we got up to on the weekend and family and even work-related things. At that point, it's transactional. We're not rooted in deep connection. We are not aligned. We have not formed any point of connection. We're just being polite. And polite is fine, but it's not the stuff that moves mountains. It's not the stuff that inspires people or keeps people engaged or encourages them to go the extra mile. And I think for each of us, irrespective of our position or what we do, we want to have relationships where people are invested in us and we're invested in them, and we are cheering each other on, we are supporting each other to deliver results and to be the best that we can be. Whether it is with our team or our boss or our clients or our friends and family, we want to be cheerleaders for each other and we want to have each other's backs. And I don't think we do that until we're able to be vulnerable and admit our failures and be willing to show each other who we really are. And that's not to say we need to share our deep, dark secrets with each other. I don't think that's the case at all. But I do think we need to show up as the people we genuinely are. And we need to show that we're fallible. This idea of being a perfect leader or a perfect boss is an outdated myth, right? I remember growing up always thinking that one day I would be this powerful businesswoman with big shoulder pads who had everything together. And of course, as you get older and you get more exposure to things and you realize what life is really like, you understand that everyone is doing the best they can. None of us are perfect. No one has everything all figured out. And when they look like they do, that's usually a cover for something. And again, I'm not suggesting that we need to air each other's dirty laundry, but we do need to be able to keep it real. We do need to be able to be vulnerable and genuine and authentic as to who we are and build a relationship based on that. And sometimes we may not like each other as much as we hoped. But when you actually build a relationship where there is vulnerability and honesty and openness and you consistently show up and invest and present, those end up being the strongest relationships where you know you have each other's backs, where you go above and beyond and you feel valued and you feel seen as an individual. That is when we are happiest and that's when we are thriving. And I just wanted to record this because I think sometimes we forget that building trust is a process. It requires intentionality, it requires nurturing, and it requires us to open up and let our guard down. It is something that is built over weeks and months and years, and we need to constantly be thinking about how we show up as an individual and are we bringing to this relationship what we need to bring? Because we waste opportunities when we don't. And more than that, we can erode confidence and we can unintentionally create these barriers that are very hard to overcome once they're established. And that was the case for me with this boss that I sort of mentioned at the start of the podcast. We could have had such a great working relationship. I could have excelled under him and supported him to achieve his vision. But we never got to a point where I understood his vision because he'd never invested the time or shown up in a consistent manner or with a consistent message that I understood it. For me, that's a real wasted opportunity. And it was actually a really difficult time working together. I didn't enjoy that process at all. And I feel like it was such an easy fix. But the truth is, everyone chooses how they show up in a relationship. You get to choose what type of leader you are, what type of colleague you are, what type of person you are. And if you're not willing to let your guard down, if you're not willing to show up and do the work and invest in the relationships, it's never going to be something great. And we always get results wherever we focus our attention and our time. And I want to urge you, whatever stage of your career you're in, check in on your relationships. Do they support you? Do they understand you? Do they know you? Do they trust you? Sometimes these are really hard questions to answer. Sometimes they're really uncomfortable truths when we realize that not all our relationships are great. But the great news is we can always turn it around with a bit of TLC and a bit of intentionality. We can really create meaningful, long-lasting relationships that will see success not only in this role, but will support each other well beyond this immediate team and these immediate opportunities and challenges. And I encourage you to do that. I encourage you to step back and do a little audit of your team and your colleagues and think about where you need to invest some more time and energy and get clear on how you're going to do that and go ahead and do it. Because trust starts with each one of us making the decision to build that solid foundation. And it's necessary if you are going to be an exceptional leader to have that foundation of trust. Okay, my friend, have a beautiful day. Thanks for joining me on the Building Up Leaders in Property podcast. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, I'd love for you to take a moment and review the show if you found it helpful so that other people can find it. or you might want to share it with a colleague. Thanks again. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you next time.